Okay. I'll call this is the November 9th, 2022 meeting of the Fire Station Building Committee. I'll call the meeting to order. We do have a couple of members who are remote tonight, so I'll take roll call attendance. Todd Lindmark.
Here.
Chris Baker.
Here.
Kevin Champagne here. Chief Kinney.
Present.
Justin Yanosik.
Here.
And Justin Casanova Davis.
Here.
Aaron Hunt is not present tonight. We'll go to our first agenda item, which is public comment. See anyone from the public on the Zoom call? Our two members of the public in the audience are shaking their head no. So we'll move on to the first discussion item. Please discuss results of November 7th Planning Board meeting. Ron, I don't know what you want to say on it, but long story short, they gave us approval of the special permit as well as the earthwork permit, and what were the other permits that they gave us approval for? There were four permits. Oh, you're muted, Ron.
Sorry, it's the stormwater permit,
Yep.
the special permit that allows alternative parking solutions. It's the earthwork permit for removal and bringing in of soils. And then the fourth permit was the special permit for green belt, which is on the ballot or coming up on the ballot. So we had presented them a sketch of actually planting inside the utility easement against the church property. And then the documents that we submitted for permit approval, which is the site approval permit that we got last night, that showed us not planting in the easement. So if the vote passes, I guess it's moot. We just build what we've submitted. If the vote doesn't pass, we're still going to have to address that, right? And in our last discussions with Bob Bullard, the town inspector, he still questions, like, how can you build in an easement, right? And he's the one who's going to enforce the requirement. So in addition to that, there are planning board members who are concerned that if we do plant in that easement area, it's going to block the sight lines of the apparatus coming out of the apparatus bays and onto the apron, as well as the vehicles coming down Main Street looking at the doors of the fire station. So that's kind of a work in progress until the vote takes place. But as Kevin said, everything's been approved. So what we've submitted for the green belt has been approved. The only thing that might change that is if the vote does not pass.
And then there was a request to add some notes on the drawings with regards to relocation of a water line by that drainage area.
Correct. Yep. So, and that basically what they're looking for is we are literally going to put a note on the drawing that says general contractor to coordinate final location to avoid existing drainage pipe connections. So, which is, it's a common section, actually. We already have that in our specifications, because it's a common coordination comment that they have to coordinate all the underground structures with existing. But in this particular case, it's no big deal. We'll just add that to the plan.
Okay.
I did have a discrepancy that I saw on page 7, item number 5. It says construction work at the site shall commence no earlier than 7 a.m. and is to end no later than 7 p.m. Monday through Saturday, including truck and machine startup and movement. And obviously the part about there shall be no work on Sundays or following the following legal holidays: New Year's Day, Memorial Day, Independence Day, Labor Day, Thanksgiving Day, and Christmas. And then in item 7. The very last line says on-site truck movements may operate between 7 a.m. and 5 p.m. Monday through Friday. So those two lines kind of contradict each other a little bit. One is saying it's okay from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. Monday through Saturday, and one says that it's only okay 7 a.m. to 5 p.m. Monday through Friday.
Is one of them just for trucks and one's just for all construction work, though?
Well, I kind of I can't tell. One does say, on-site truck movement may operate between 7 and 5 p.m. Monday through Friday, but in Section 5, it's construction work at the site can commence or shall commence no earlier than 7 a.m. and end at 7 p.m. Monday through Saturday, and it says including truck and machine startup and movement. So that would include trucks and machines.
So, Chief, we had the same question, and we batted it around. What we think this means, and I think, Kevin, you're going to ask us to confirm all of this, right? Because it makes sense for us to confirm it. We think what it means is as long as you are on the site, your machines and your trucks can all drive around between 7 and 7. But if you're driving off the site and using the main street road, you can only do that between 9 and 5. That's the only reasonable explanation we could have for that kind of conflict, because it looks to us to be pretty standard language, right?
Yeah.
7 and 5, I think, right?
Yeah, it's 7 to 5, yeah.
7 to 5, yeah. So it's a weird thing. I can certainly reach out to Rich and just ask him to confirm this.
Yeah, I think that'd be a good idea, just so we know.
Yep.
If and hopefully when this does go to construction, we have that resolved. Okay. Anything else?
Nope.
Ron, you're moving your lips, but I don't know if you're supposed to be talking to us. Uh-oh.
No, I was talking to somebody else on the phone.
Okay.
John's trying to get my phone number, and I thought Don was calling me. We're playing tag over here behind the scenes in our Hollywood squares.
Okay. All right. I just wanted to make sure maybe the audio didn't go out. Next item is please discuss prior and current project differences. Ron, I think this is something you had added after you had a conversation with Matt about the previous project. I don't know if you want to, I feel like we're going to touch on that in some of these FAQ, when we finalize the FAQs. I don't know if there's anything you want to go over now, or if you just want to handle it then.
I think the general question that was asked of us, and, I don't want to, I kind of want to make sure I'm getting this correctly. The issue is, what's the biggest thing in town, right? Like, what's the biggest question going on in town? And the one question that says, hey, this has been asked a lot, right, is, why are we planning to build a new station instead of renovating what we have? And it seemed that some of the answers we've been given out there, right, is that it costs more to renovate the existing station than to build new. So I suspect that that's a big question mark in the minds of voters, because we haven't, and this is, I don't want to read into this, but I think what Matt is saying is, and his exact question is, where is this mandated? Like, in other words, what are these codes? So for clarification reason, and I think it's a good idea to put this right in the frequently asked questions, although it will be a little bit longer of an answer than we've typically been providing. So one of the biggest things is Category 4, right? So the International Building Code that deals with existing buildings is the IEBC. And the IEBC has what they call categories of renovation, right? So if you are adding or removing or modifying more than 50% of the space, then the entire building has to be brought up to code. It doesn't matter if half the building is being used for sleeping rooms or offices or administrative areas or trucks, right? Once you mess with more than 50% of the area, then it has to come up to full compliance. So we actually have that in our report. It's in the feasibility report. But I think what we should do for the frequently asked questions is put down the chapter and verse, right? In other words, the Massachusetts State Building Code is predicated on the IEBC. IEBC, this chapter, this paragraph, specifically requires that the buildings come up to current code compliance. And the issue with that, and I'm going to read right from the code, right? This is a quote from the code. For buildings with concrete or unreinforced masonry walls, when the work area exceeds the 50% of floor area, then all of the structural and concrete masonry walls, both gravity and lateral load resisting walls, are required to be secured to the floor and the roof deck above to meet this code. So in essence, what that means is we not only have to bring the whole building up to code, we have to bring the structure up to code. That includes the foundations, which is considered the floor, and that includes the framing of the existing building. So, and that's in our feasibility study, which was one of the reasons it was driving the decisions as to what we could and couldn't do. The second thing that hit home with the existing building is the International Building Code, which again is the Massachusetts State Code, requirements for Category 4 buildings. The IBC defines, so Category 1 building is essentially a temporary building. Category 2 buildings is anything that doesn't fall into Category 3. A Category 3 building is, and they have lists, right? So a Category 3 building would be a school, it would be an office building, it would be most commercial buildings. And then Category 4, it specifically states that the following buildings designated as essential facilities are Group 1 and 2 surgery and emergency treatment centers, so hospitals, right? Fire, rescue, ambulance, and police stations, including emergency vehicle garages. Designated earthquake, hurricane, and other emergency shelters. Designated emergency preparedness, communications, and operations centers, and other similar essential structures. So we didn't, and this all was part of the feasibility study when we were working with the working group. We had a lot of conversations about, can the trailer continue to exist there? Yeah, it can if we do absolutely nothing. But if we start to renovate the building, it has to be a Category 4 building. That includes the trailer, so the trailer goes away. There's no keeping that. And we also talked about, can we just build sort of a pre-engineered garage for fire trucks? And the answer is no, because the code actually says including the garages for emergency vehicles. So that in and of itself, and it's a political thing, right? I mean, does that call into question what's going on with the previous studies? And Matt has given us, so much information on this, both when we started the project, during the study, and he's continuing to share information. One of the things we look at is a while back, there was 14 point something million for both the police and the fire station. And looking at some rough numbers that he's given to us, $4.8 million was designated for the police station. For the fire station, rather. Now, we can only assume that $4.8 million was, we're just going to leave the existing building the way it is. We're going to move around some interior partitions, and that's it. And that just does not comply with code. So, even your local building inspector, now that we've worked with your electrical inspector and your building inspector, I sincerely believe that if we decided as an ownership group and you told us that that's what you wanted us to design, I don't think your local inspectors would allow us to sort of not comply with the state building code. The one thing that has changed, though, since then, which has made our life a little bit more enhanced than what the previous projects were, is the wind loading in Massachusetts changed. So between 2016 and what we're working on now, the wind loads in Norfolk were risen or increased to 140 miles an hour. So now that's been all the high impact large missile test protection that we need to do on the building. So that wasn't in place back in 2016, but those other codes were. The other thing that has changed between 2016 and now is the NFPA now requires what they call green zones, yellow zones, and red zones, which is really the separation of contamination zones within the fire station. They require separate enclosed contamination spaces, which, you know, you could have, for instance, in the past, you could have had these things in the apparatus bay, right? You can't anymore. They have to be enclosed. They have to be under negative pressure, and they have to be designated as contamination spaces. And then you have the yellow contamination space, which means I'm coming out of the contamination space. I've got some clothing I've got to deal with, and some uniforms and the gear, right? The helmets and the apparatus, meaning the SCBA. You got to take care of that in the yellow zone, and then you're in the green zone, and the green zone is like a non-contaminated space. So those types of NFPA make the building safe for the fire department. They didn't exist back then in 2016, but they do now. So if someone were to, and I guess people around town are asking that big question, right? Which is, what's the big differences? And I would say that that's part of the big differences. Those things. I mean, there's more, and I could go on, but I think that those pieces right there added a lot. Number one, it adds square footage. Number two, it adds the fact that we can't renovate the existing building, and even if we did renovate the existing building, it would be a type of project just like we put into our feasibility study, where we are restructuring and rebuilding the fire station. And I think the town knows this, because if, you know, the information that Matt has shared about the police station, that existing building was completely restructured. So we would have run into the same thing on this project. Now, I said a lot. Maybe there's a way we can condense that.
I think we're going to have to, Ron.
and put it into the frequently asked questions. But the three big components there are two code requirements that were simply not considered back in 2016. And if they were considered, then we really got to take a good hard look at that $4.8 million, right? Which was part of that $14 million. And again, I don't want to misquote things. I'm just reading from a Excel spreadsheet that we received. And then the other part of that is the RFQ that came out, right? The RFQ that came out said that we're looking for a fire station of between $10 and $12 million, not including soft costs. So if you take the $12 million and you add in roughly 30% for soft costs, you get pretty close to $14 or $16 million. And so I think that's what we've been talking about during our committee meetings, where someone says, where'd this $16 million come from? And Kevin, you and I spoke, and it was, when the RFQ for this project was getting crafted, there were just a lot of assumptions made, right?
Well, yeah, I mean, we didn't have any feasibility study or anything to go off of, so it was...
Right. So it's not so much that our discussions have been, what's the big difference between then and now? The information that Matt shared is that, the town had $14 million to do both the police and fire station. Things got derailed a little bit when they decided not to do a combined facility, but they decided to do two separate facilities and then purchase a building to renovate for the police. So, even that project had a lot of big decisions that took place after a number was already decided. And I think the difference that we're doing here, when people say, what's the decision or what was the thought in deciding to build new, it comes down to money, right? What's the least expensive thing to do that's going to give you something that's going to last, and you're never going to have to expand it or add on to it because you run out of space in 10 or 15 years.
Okay. I think when we get to that FAQ question, we'll figure out some way to boil that down into a paragraph.
Can we just put a link to that video?
Yes, that's my solution.
So Ron, I think you've been able to look at the previous floor plans that were presented back in 2016. Were those,
Yeah.
I mean, would those be code compliant today?
Well, and again, it reads more like a concept plan, right?
Yeah.
And I would say that most architects, when they come up with an initial concept plan, they haven't gone through the exercise of looking at all the door swings, looking at all the corridor widths, looking at all the hallway widths, the separations. It would not comply with code just at a quick glance. That's not to say that had that architect and that plan been developed further, like it wouldn't have complied with code. It's just that concept design happened. When you look at it, there are some significant issues with it, right? In terms of code, like, you have a 4-foot wide corridor with a 3-foot door that opens into it. So that just doesn't work. Either your corridor needs to get wider or you can't have doors on the hallway, right? But the biggest thing was the idea that the program that they had kind of reduced the square footage, right? So one of our comments that we've talked about and that we've put in the answers to the FAQs has been, hey, they started with this square footage, they ended up with that square footage, they removed some program. Every project does that. Every project does start with a feasibility study program, and then as the building gets designed, those square footages always change. Some go up, some go down, right? Our project did not remove any program spaces. The only program space that we removed was the watch room. And the reason we removed the watch room is because the MEC is in control of the front entrance lobby, right? They're in control of the front entrance lobby now, and they're going to be in control when we're done, because they want to be. That's the deal. And so because of that, we took out a watch room. The other way that we've reduced our square footage down from the 30,399 or 32,000, whichever one you're initially looking at it, that got us down to the current square footage now is we went from a 30% net to gross factor to a 17% based on the actual design. What that means is typically when you have a fire station and you have net usable square footage of a certain area, which means, if you say it's a 10 by 10 room, there's actually 10 feet between the walls. The gross to net includes what do we have for corridors and walk around space, what do we have for hallways, what do we have for mechanical chases and shafts, and all of that adds to the size of a building, right? Because you have to be able to get between the rooms that are of a specific size. We started with a generous 30% because we wanted to make sure that as the project was designed, it didn't get bigger, it would get smaller. So aside from the watch room that disappeared, we took out all of that space. And the second thing that we did was we started using rooms in a multifunctional way. For instance, the actual hallway that separates the bunk room restrooms and the actual bunk rooms is in fact your locker room without building a locker room. So we took the square footage that you already have in the design in order to get from one end of the building to the other, and we put lockers in that space. So now that is in fact your locker room. So you have the same accommodation of personal lockers outside the bunk rooms without having a whole separate room dedicated to that space. We took some of the administrative spaces. Instead of having 4 independent offices, we've got one larger one with workstations. And we did this throughout the entire design process, and that allowed that net to gross factor to be reduced down to 17%. So there's just a difference, right? In the apples to apples comparison, and we've all been involved in them. I personally, other members of our team have all personally been involved with projects where the building is of a certain size and someone decides, nope, we're going to make it smaller. We're going to get rid of some of these spaces. And then unfortunately, years later, Walpole is a good example. Now they're looking to do another station, right? And projects that take that route of cutting out program rather than figuring out a way to make it smaller and keep everything that you actually need, they're too small. And then later on, even before the bonds are paid off, or even just after the bonds are paid off, they're looking to do additions and renovations. And I think one of the things that the select board asked us to do was make sure that that doesn't happen, right? Like build it right and build it once, I think was the message, that we don't want to have to come back and revisit this in 10, 20, or 25 years.
Okay. I think that's a pretty good response on that discussion item, Ron. Does anybody else have anything that they want to add or questions that they want to ask?
No, that was great.
Okay. All right. Please discuss committee update at November town meeting and the January 11th special town meeting. So next week is our November special town meeting. I'm going to give an update as part of, I think it's Article 7, that's committee updates. It's going to be relatively brief. The moderator has asked that we keep it brief, only because we have our own town meeting coming up in January where we can talk about the project. So it'll be, I don't know who else can attend, but Chief, will you be back by then or maybe not?
By,
Tuesday.
yeah, I'll be back.
I don't know if we can
I'll be
have
there for
the
town
boards in the lobby like we did last time.
Absolutely.
Might be good if the people running town meeting are okay with it. But
Do we want to do just the new informational board and allow
Yeah,
people
we
to
could do
scan
that.
it? Or do we want to bring all the boards?
bring all the boards with you, but maybe just set up the informational board for now. Okay.
Should we double check that that's okay with town meeting, or has anybody checked with the moderator, or is there somebody where we should check with before just putting it there? Or?
Sure. I don't know if you or Justin can ask the moderator if we can put the boards up in the lobby. I mentioned to him when, I think it was Judith or someone sent out an email to all the committee chairs saying if they were going to give it an update. And I had emailed them that we had planned to not make a presentation, that it was just going to be an update, and that we were going to have the boards, or that we wanted to have the boards up in the lobby like we did for the Springtown meeting. I didn't hear back otherwise on it, Amanda, but it probably wouldn't hurt if you or Justin could confirm.
Okay.
Kevin, I can check on that. I don't think there's going to be an issue putting the boards in the lobby, but I'll confirm for the group.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks. For the January 11th special town meeting, I guess we should probably talk about that a little bit. I mean, it's 2 months away. There were a couple things I wanted to touch on about it. One, do we want to have any community events between now and then to talk about the project? It's probably not a bad idea. And when do we want to do that? And two, how do we want to present all this at the January town meeting? Last night I watched the December 1st, 2015 meeting, which was the last time the public safety project got presented. And it was essentially a slideshow that I think touches on a lot of the things we've already touched on, or maybe is captured in the slides you've put together to date, Ron? Mm-hmm. I'm just curious what people are thinking, or Justin, you've probably been involved in some of these town meetings before, like how we should possibly present this. if anybody has any thoughts.
I think it would be useful to use
Kevin,
that frequently asked question.
I might have missed your question. I didn't really hear what your question was.
Sure. So the January 11th special town meeting, is it up to us to determine how we're going to present it, whether it's a slideshow or is there some sort of format we should be working inside of? How does it work?
So this is a little new in the sense that it's kind of the moderator's discretion a little bit. There's moderators that give wide latitude on presentations, amount of time, et cetera. It's something that I would check in with Jay and just make sure on. But I'm imagining what I've been accustomed to, they'll give like 10 minutes for like an opening presentation. So you could do like a slideshow, a PowerPoint, and go through that way. But, you know, it's kind of really on the moderator, how he likes to run his meeting. So I would just double check on Jay, but that's what I've typically seen when we run project, in my experience.
Do you want to ask him that too, Justin, when you ask about the
Yeah, I'll put it in an email and just put you on it as well, just so you're aware on both those questions.
And is there any sort of slideshow started, Ron, that maybe we could build off of? I'm just trying to
Yeah,
not
honestly,
have it
I
fall on
think
me or anybody else to start something from scratch here.
I think if we get the team together and sat down and cartooned out a presentation, because we're really trying to do two things, right? And the only reason this is being suggested is because of all of the feedback that we've been getting about, you know, what's the difference, and why is it this and why is it that? So I think if we go up and do a presentation and say, here it is, right, and give everybody the facts and figures, it's not going to answer the question of why. So maybe the two parts we need to do is, one, this is what we did. Like, this was our process and generated the why we're doing what we're doing. And embedded within that could be the differences between, you know, we looked at this and we looked at that. And people will realize that the approach that we did was similar back in 2016, but we went in a different direction for the reasons that I just went on about, right? And then we tell them, for those reasons, this is what we're doing and this is what it costs. If there's enough time, Justin, and the moderator's allowance for us to do that, we could all get together and sit down and say, okay, what are the biggest things, right? And I think the email that Matt sent recently is a perfect outline for this, right? Because I think that the questions that he's highlighting are the questions that's on everyone's mind, right? Why is the cost per square foot so much higher? Why aren't we renovating? What was the differences between the two approaches to the project? So I haven't started a PowerPoint. I don't think the team has gotten together to say, hey, what's that final presentation going to be like at a town meeting? But I think it would be a good exercise for us all to get together, you know, the next week or two, you know, before the holidays, and just really start to cartoon out, number one, how much time do we have, right? Maybe we can check with the moderator to see what will be allowed. And number two, what are we presenting? I suspect there's going to be lots of questions after the presentation.
Sure.
But I think presenting it initially makes it seem, well, it actually, not to make it seem, it demonstrates that this is a process that we went through. We're not just answering your questions now because you're asking them, right? This was our process, and this is what it led to. And then if they have questions, we're basically just clarifying questions based on the process that's been presented.
I would just add to that, I think, you know, obviously as a team, we can talk it through, because obviously for this special town meeting, this project is the only thing on there. So I imagine there's going to be a lot of questions, robust debate. Getting that timetable from Jay, how much time we'll have to present and how we, you know, articulate our presentation or so forth. I think I agree with Ron. It would be good to talk about that. But obviously knowing the time that we have, et cetera, is a good way to do that. I think there's going to be a lot of questions. And you know, I think as a group we should just converse and see how we want to approach it.
Yeah, I totally agree. So I guess where I'm going with this is, I mean, when do we want to meet to talk about this? Because when I look at the calendar, so like, you know, normally we meet every 2 weeks. 2 weeks from now is the day before Thanksgiving. I don't think we're going to meet that night. Do we want to try and meet again as early as next week and just talk about the presentation? Or do we just aim for the 30th to talk about the presentation? Ron, I mean, I know you're trying to get drawings out next week, so I'm trying to be respectful of that too.
Kevin, are you talking about doing it at a working group level, or are you talking about?
I think the whole committee should be involved, honestly, because I think we're all going to have important input. So I was thinking of more like a committee meeting where really our only agenda item is to go over the presentation. I don't know. What does everybody else think?
Yeah, here's something we can do. We can put together there's a lot of information out there right now, right? There's the frequently asked questions. There's some emails floating around. There's previous presentations that we've made. It might be good as we're trying to round out and finish off the construction documents. We could put together, and everybody could put together, right? So everybody could put their thoughts down on paper. Like, what are your top 10 priorities that we think we should have in our message? And then if we share that by next week and then reconvene on the 30th, that would have the makings of a pretty good starting base, right? For us to start to outline and cartoon this, because everybody would have a chance. You know, the chief obviously got a perspective on this that needs to be considered. You do, every member of the board does. Justin, Todd, maybe Matt would like to get involved again and just, kind of outline what they think should be in the message. And then we can compare all of those on the 30th and really start to noodle out what's the outline going to be.
Yep.
I'm sure we can get an answer quickly on what the duration of that presentation is going to be. And I don't know how the question needs to be phrased to the moderator, if it just has to be how much time do we have, or if it can be put out there that, hey, this is, we have a lot of information that needs to be gone through, and it's hard to pick and choose what gets taken out of it, because then it leaves more questions than answers. We anticipated taking a half hour. Is that okay? Rather than saying, how much time do we have? Just a thought.
This is my first time working with Jay, so I don't know his style. And like I said, each moderator is different.
Sure.
I think I'm imagining, because Jay's an attorney as well, I think a 30-minute presentation, he probably not be a fan of it. But when I speak with him, I say, obviously we have a lot of information. How much time duration can you give the committee to do a presentation? Because I do imagine that he's going to want some debate back and forth a little bit, and that's what open town meeting is. Yep. So I think just doing a long litany of talking for 30 minutes might not be something he's interested. But if that's something that the committee wants to ask him for, I'm more than willing to ask him. I haven't typically seen that.
Yeah. I think 30 minutes, people's eyes might start glazing over.
Yeah, no, I threw
talking
30 minutes out there as an arbitrary number.
Just a second, Donna. I think in the last meeting, or the December meeting that I watched last night, they talked for maybe 10 to 15 minutes. And then there were some...
That's what I've typically seen.
Then there was a question and answer period after that.
That's all right.
Yeah.
If you're only given 10 minutes to present it.
Oh, we lost your audio, John.
And knowing there's going to be questions, and then have slides prepared to answer those questions, so that rather than a 30-minute hit, that people glaze over. Some of the things Ron has talked about are going to certainly be high points, but you heard wonderful explanations that will eat up most of the 10 minutes. So we have to be able to kind of hit the high points, talk about process, talk about the why, talk about the cost, and then knowing that there's going to be follow-up to all of those. So it's giving enough detail so that the 10-minute package gives most of the info, even if it's at a high level. And then the subsequent questions, you may have 10 slides to present, but then you have another 10 to 20, kind of behind it for anticipated questions. And you can also have committee members ask questions as well, and their residents as well, to kind of keep the, if something wasn't addressed in the actual presentation, to make sure something gets out there if there's information that, we feel like we can't because of a time limit.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think, obviously we talk as a group and see what works, but I think of it structuring as like that first presentation is like an executive summary, right? That high level, big picture of the project, getting some nitty gritty, but then be prepared for the questions that undoubtedly we know are going to be asked. And I thought those emails from Matt in particular were a good example. Like, we know what some of these questions are, and we'll be prepared for that with the other slides that we may have. So I agree with John.
Okay. Is everyone available on November 30th? So, I mean, 2 weeks from now is the 23rd. I think we should skip that one. I personally am away for Thanksgiving. It's the night before Thanksgiving. I don't think anybody wants to
I
be.
won't be able. I can do the 30th.
30th. Todd, are you good for the 30th? Chief, you can do the 30th? Justin?
I can
Both
make the
Justins?
30th, yeah. Yes. Yeah.
I could do the 30th as well.
You can? Okay. Sorry, Justin.
I said yes.
Okay, good. I texted Aaron. Hopefully he gets back to me during the meeting. Because like I said, I think it's important that we're all here and we can all kind of share our ideas and maybe start to storyboard something. I mean, that would give us 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 weeks before the presentation. So we could probably meet a couple more times between then and January 11th. I guess I should ask that too. Is everybody available on January 11th?
Yeah.
I'll speak up at once.
I'll be there.
Okay.
I kind of feel like I have to see this one through.
And Ron, I think
The vote's on a Wednesday night.
what's that?
The vote is on a Wednesday night.
The town meeting is on a Wednesday night.
Town meeting's on a Wednesday night. What time? Yeah, I mean, the answer is yes, I can make it.
It's usually, they usually start at 7 o'clock.
Yeah, usually it's 7 o'clock. I don't know that they talked about an exact start time.
All right.
Justin Unosik, are you good for January 11th? Hopefully.
That's too far out for me to look at the schedule, but I'll make it work. I'll be there.
Okay. Yeah, but I think it would be good if someone from Doran Whittier and Vertex can be there too. I'm sure there'll be design and bidding related questions. Okay. As far as having a community event between, sorry, Donnie, did you have a question on the presentation?
Thank you for letting me speak, what's normally out of turn. I am Donna Jones, a resident in favor of the project. I am a volunteer with Norfolk Community Television, which is meant to get the message out from whatever residents want to say. I have asked for 4 months to get me a summary of the project and have committee members record something and town hall employees record something that explains how the taxpayers' money is spent and how the taxpayer has a decision in every part of that, what we pay for taxes. It was just yesterday that 3 members came to the studio and gave a summary. They did the highlights. It will be under 30 minutes for the 3 of them. That's why I've been pestering the architect for the drawings, of all the drawings, to support what you said. This sounds like we're doing the same thing. What you just discussed, what do we plan to present in January, is the same thing I'm doing. Is getting my video out by mid-December going to be helpful? Is it?
Yeah, I think it will be. Honestly, I think even if it's just a month ahead of time, I think that's when people are going to start, a lot of people are going to start tuning into the project as it approaches. So I think the videos are going to be helpful.
I would agree. I think the more exposure people have and the more ways they can be exposed to it, whether it be the boards around the community, whether it be seeing it on the Norfolk TV channel, whether it be seeing it on the website, seeing, if there are signs posted, whatever, the more exposure people get, the better. So I think there may be a little bit of redundance, but at the same time, it's a consistent message, which is good. That's what the people need to see so they can make an informed choice.
I would agree, and I'd say that the December timeframe, like you said, it puts it fresh in people's minds for that meeting in January, and also we have the obviously limited time period at the beginning of town meeting for that executive summary, so yours is going to be a nice, kind of longer version of that, that we have to condense to a short time period.
I'd suggest that the three people share their outlines, their script that
we can do that too.
Covers that. And
I think the list of 5 to 10 issues is a great idea too, to kind of get the ball rolling, Ron. I'll send an email out to everybody to try and send that for next week. Okay, thank you.
And you did say that you'd publish in the January 1st newspaper.
Yes, I reached out to the newspaper last week and let them know that the timeline went forward. So she was going through the information on the website and then was going to reach out to me for an interview. So, thank you. So, as far as having a community event, if we can talk about that for a couple minutes. So if we met on the 30th, 2 weeks after that would be December 14th. I think we probably don't want to go too much further than that, because then you start getting into Christmas and then we're right up against, maybe we want to do one right before the town meeting, a week before the town meeting as well. But I'm thinking something in mid-December might be helpful. What do people think? If we aligned it with a normal committee meeting night, but did it at like 7 o'clock?
Yeah. Yeah, I think that would be the latest we'd want to do it. Pushing it closer to Christmas is just going to end up with nobody going.
And the only reason why I'm asking if we want to come up with a date is because I can mention it at the town meeting next week.
So we're thinking December 14th. I just want to put it in.
I would say December 7th or 14th. The 14th would be, if we're meeting on the 30th, would be 2 weeks. Would that work for everyone?
Yep.
I think so. Yep.
Justin and Justin? Todd?
Yeah, I'm looking at the calendar. Were there 2 dates you proposed? I think the 14th.
So
whatever. Yeah, later on, getting closer to it's a better date.
I said the 7th or the 14th.
Yeah.
The 14th might be better.
Yeah.
If we're talking on the
14th
30th
works,
and there's something we
can
want to
make it.
clean up the following week, we could always meet quick then too. So,
Yeah.
where should we have it? Would the library be Amanda or Justin? Would you be able to reach out to the library and see if it's available that Wednesday night?
Yeah, I can reach out to them.
Unless you want to have it at the station, Chief, but I know it can be kind of cold.
Yeah,
In there.
unfortunately, we could. It could definitely help drive the point home because it's probably going to be cold and.
Well, let's see if the library is available,
Yeah.
and then we can always use the station as a backup plan. It seemed like we had kind of a good turnout at the library last time,
Yeah.
so if we can get it again, it's probably a more comfortable room.
Yeah, I think it's more conducive for the
Yeah.
question and answer. I think at that point, hopefully everybody will have kind of understanding of what the status of the current building is.
Yep.
You know, we can still reiterate to them, hey, if you want to come take a tour and see the conditions and all of that, please do, you know, come by.
Yeah, and if we have this presentation far enough along somehow, maybe we can even do like a small dry run of it or pieces of it, or we just present what we've presented at the past community meetings, Ron. So,
Yeah, maybe if we can get the dry run done, we take a stab at it. It'd be a good rehearsal.
yeah, we'll see. Okay. All right. Any other discussion items that anyone wants to touch on before we move into action items?
Yes, and Todd, I might ask for your help a little bit about this. I think the last time we spoke regarding the acoustic study, I did say I would speak with Bob, just to, I think we should do our due diligence. I was worried about if we didn't do it, there might be more expenses later on. And I did speak with Bob and our team, and I think it might be prudent for us to do the acoustic study because there were issues, Todd, correct me if I'm wrong, with the Freeman Kennedy School. And there were a lot of complaints about sound there, and the expenses were more than $7,000. They're pretty expensive, and they will still continue for a length of time. So I think the committee should consider doing. I think I didn't like how it was presented, just to be honest. But I think it's prudent to talk about that acoustic study and doing it. I think it will save the town a lot of headache in the future when we have a baseline and we don't have to deal with undoubtedly what may be some complaints in the future. I think it's prudent to consider.
Okay. What does everybody else think about that? Any thoughts?
Makes sense.
Yeah, I agree.
I'm still against it. I still think it's frivolous and wasteful, and it's not worth doing.
So, I guess, so what caused the additional expenses, if the acoustic study is going to cost $7,000, right? What happened at Freeman Kennedy after the fact that cost more than that?
Well, I think there was a lot
Why wouldn't you
of,
just perform the acoustic study at that point?
because then I think, and I wasn't here for this, and if there's anything that we can add beyond what I say, Todd, feel free, and maybe Bob would be a good source for email. But, I think when a resident, when there's no baseline, they say, well, you did increase the sound, the sound, it's different. And it really required, I think lawyers got involved, if I'm correct. It required the town to do a variety of things to sort of prove that the sound had not increased. That was substantially more than $7,000, including attorneys and other studies. Like I said, that was just my general understanding of speaking with Bob and his professional opinion, our team here, when we talked about it. Todd, is there anything else that you can add there?
So the only other thing that I can add is with respect to the sound at the school was that they did have to do some additional steps in order to minimize the impact from some of the air handlers which were on top of the facility, because they did increase the sound in the area, which caused the complaints by various neighbors. So that had to be remedied later on after the fact. So in order to avoid that, obviously having the baseline to say, okay, it's X, Y, and Z, and then later on, if there's no impact or no increase, you've covered your basis. And again, with Justin, me as a finance guy, I don't like to spend any money either, so Justin, I'm on your side, both Justins. But, telling us after the fact, oh, by the way, we should do this study later on, when it probably should have been included, because it's going to be a requirement on almost all buildings, my understanding, but we decided not to include it from the get-go, but now we're being told that we should include it, and then now it's becoming, maybe we don't have to do it, but if it's my inclination, then we should have it done, but maybe figure out splitting the cost or whatever, because, again, if it was supposed to be done, but it wasn't done, or there just seems to be a little bit of a delayed, oh, by the way, we should now think about this.
Yeah, I can say from personal experience, not necessarily for noise studies, but many construction projects that I've done, we've either done a pre-construction survey or sometimes we haven't. It's been related to vibrations, cracks, pretty much anything. And we've had complaints on both sides. Some that we've had the backup, the prior investigation to say, no, hey, this was here before, and then it just goes away. And when we haven't, even though we didn't believe that our construction project actually did anything to cause the damages, you then automatically are bringing in attorneys. You're scrambling to try and find some way, if at all possible, to prove that it wasn't caused by your construction project, when, what might seem like a lot of money at this moment, then later on seems like a really short amount of money to prove that it had nothing to do with your project. It's almost like an insurance policy.
Yeah,
I think you did a good summary of it. It's kind of, when you don't do the study, the burden of the proof is now going to be on the town to prove.
Yeah, it's just like a civil case, a civil lawsuit or anything like that. It's not, it's on us to prove that we're not guilty.
Yeah, I can understand that. I wonder if we should, we didn't have a motion to really review this again tonight. And we do have a couple committee members that are either not here or not present. I wonder if, I know we talked about for the 11:30 meeting, it was going to be just storyboarding the presentation, but maybe we have a motion to vote on this acoustic study for that meeting also. Gives us.
I think that'd be prudent. I also would like to talk with Ron and the team over there a little bit, because I think what Todd said merits consideration as well. So I think we should put it on for a future committee. I wanted the people to know, we spoke about it at a team meeting last week, so I wanted the board to know. It was too late to put it on the agenda.
Okay. All right, I'll talk to Amanda about putting that on the agenda for next week, or for the 30th. All right, any other discussion items?
No.
Okay. So the first action item, please review and approve locations for informational boards. So the boards are in, I think, so they're in your possession now, Chief?
They're in my office, yes.
So I just wanted to make the list of where we're going to put these up. And Chief, I don't know if there's someone from your department or someone from the town that can put these up. I'm certainly willing to go to a couple places if necessary, if people don't have time to go to a couple of them. But can we, let's come up with the list of, I don't know, our top 6 or 7 places. I think we have, 9 or 10
Yeah,
boards?
I think it's 9 or 10 boards.
And then 3 of them are rated for exterior. It actually ended up being fairly reasonable. I think it was like $700 for all 10. So, a lot less than we were talking about last meeting. So, I know I had the senior center, where I think we definitely want to put one. We should probably put one up at Town Hall. Anybody that doesn't agree, feel free to jump in.
There's already one up in the lobby at the fire station.
The fire station's already taken care of. Okay.
We're going to do the library?
Library.
Ann's Market had agreed to have one there.
Ann's Market. That's the one in River's Edge, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Did you say you talked to Silla's?
Silla's agreed as well.
Yep.
And the Norfolk TV, as well as Linda's Variety. So we have options in that little plaza.
Yeah, we probably only need one of those, I would think.
Yeah.
If we can put it in the storefront anyway.
Yep.
And then I also talked to the transfer station. I don't honestly know where we would put it up there, but they were willing to put it up. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I mean, that's probably a pretty good start. If anyone else have another location that they can think of? And those are pretty high trafficked areas.
What if we ask Four Kicks? That seems like it gets a lot of traffic, and they have that little area there.
That's a good idea.
Yeah, what about the police station lobby? I mean, people go there for permits and to do, that could be the other two that covers that area of town.
We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Did we get 10?
I think we did. I mean, I'll double check because I can't remember. I just have everything's still in the big plastic sitting in my office.
Okay. I can call Four Kicks and see if they're willing to do it. I guess, Chief, do you have someone that could go to all these locations and drop them off, or have them set up, or do you want us to take care of that?
Yeah, I think we can work with Lieutenant Finland and his group.
Everybody likes
to do that. And I've actually got to go and I've got to go inspect Four Kicks here soon. So.
Oh, there you go. Do you want to just ask them then when you go in for that, or do you want me to call them first?
No, you should call them first because I don't know exactly the date when I go. I just have to. That's just one of my spots I know is on my list.
Okay, so we have senior center, town hall, fire station, library, Ann's Market, Silla's, NCTV, transfer station, Four Kicks, and the police station.
That covers all of it. Sounds like a good list.
All right.
And it covers the different corners of town pretty well too.
So I'll ask for a motion for the committee to approve setting up boards at the senior center, town hall, the fire station, the library, Ann's Market, Silla's, NCTV, the transfer station, Four Kicks if they're accepting of it, and the police station lobby. So moved. Do I have a second? All right, we'll take a roll call vote. Todd Lindmark.
Aye.
Chris Baker.
Aye.
Kevin Champagne, aye. Chief Kinney.
Aye.
Justin Yanosik.
Aye.
And Justin Casanova Davis.
Aye.
All right. So if there's any that you can't get to, that you guys can't get to, just
we'll
shoot me a message and let me know.
Yeah, and I'll coordinate with Lieutenant Finland after this, and we'll probably have that done by what? You all are back again Friday?
Yeah, but I can do anything.
Okay.
Even over the weekend.
Okay.
Okay. All right. The next one is please review and approve revisions to the website FAQs. I was hoping we could just go through this. I don't know how long it's going to take if people want to do it now, but I feel like we need to get these updated FAQs on the website. So we can go through. I think, like I mentioned, Matt sent us some really good feedback on some of them. He has some history on obviously the past project, so maybe we can kind of touch on some of his comments as we go through it. Amanda, I don't know if you want to put it up on the screen. It was the Word document that was included with or if there's some way for me to put it up on the screen.
Do you have it right there?
I do, but my computer's not plugged in to anything.
But are you on Zoom?
No. I can't connect to the, connected. When I first got here, it did not connect to the internet.
All you have to do is say it.
Let me make sure it's working. It is working. Okay. So now, what do I do? Go to the Zoom, right?
I'll get in Zoom, get shared access, and then share your screen.
Yeah, if you join the Zoom, I can make you a co-host.
Okay. do I need to mute my computer? Okay. It's not muting for some reason.
Recording in progress.
That stop it? Nope.
The sound from your computer is amplified in the microphone and echoing.
Yeah, I know. I can't figure out how to. I'm pressing the no microphone button and it's not working.
Oh, mute it and then turn the volume all the way off.
Like that?
Yep.
Okay. All right, so now I can share my screen. Work. All right, everybody can see that, right? Why is that not showing up on the TV, though? This doesn't really matter.
He's got it back there.
I can see it on the Zoom.
Oh, okay, all right.
I don't know why it wouldn't be showing on there, though.
Yeah, we can see it.
Oh, all right.
Yeah, for some reason, it's just not showing on the side TV here, but I see it in front of me. So I'm just going to show it with all the markups kind of approved, maybe, to see if we want to add anything to these. So how does the new fire station compare with other towns? So we had talked about maybe just simplifying this, even getting rid of the whole first paragraph, and just listing the square footages of surrounding towns. I think you had thrown out a couple other towns, Ron, that I don't think are listed here. Swansea, maybe, and another one? You're muted, Ron.
So they're not built yet, right? But they are in the process of kind of getting ready to go to ballot, things like that. And one is, so Swansea is very new. That hasn't even finished programming yet, but we do have one in Stoughton. And that's just over 20,000 square feet. But they don't, that's a good example of a project where, some program has been removed. And that's an owner decision, right? So we could put that in there, but it's still over 21,000 square feet. The Needham Fire Station I put on here at 22,122. And from my research on the internet, I believe the town has 2 fire stations.
As does Stoughton. Stoughton has 2 facilities as well.
So Stoughton is not listed on here, though.
Right, so we can put Stoughton on there. It's 21,000 and change square feet. The other. Yep.
Stoughton is going to have 2 fire stations and a third building that is going to be administrative. They're actually splitting everything into 3 facilities.
Okay. All right, that's good to know. So really, it's 2 fire stations plus a fire admin building. So
correct.
So to that point, I think, and just for some feedback, so we have Walpole on here, we have Hyannis, Franklin, which we know has 2 stations. I don't know the size of the other one. Needham Fire Station, don't know the size of that. We can find out in Stoughton because we're working there. Matt's concern was that the communities are larger,
Which
than
they are,
Norfolk,
for sure.
which makes sense because they have multiple stations, right?
Right. I think that's the key is that they are larger. they do have different demographics. But when you're talking about a headquarters fire station and trying to house an entire operation of a fire department, we have one building and one facility to do so. They're splitting that up between 3, 4, 2. I think Hyannis is the only one that doesn't have multiple stations, but Hyannis has an enormous station. That is, that's one of the things that, when we discussed this point, that's one of the things to point out is that, if somebody goes and they just pick a singular station, if you just pick the one station in Walpole, the newest one, well, yeah, it doesn't look like there's a adequate or accurate comparison. But if you take all 3 of their stations plus the new one they're trying to get on Route 1, you're now looking at substantial, significant amounts of square footage to provide fire protection to that community. So I think that's the reason and the drive behind the total square footage dedicated to, providing fire protection or for fire stations versus just picking out one building. Because a substation does not and will never have to include the amount of square footage or spaces required for a headquarters station that is both a functioning fire station and the administrative hub of the organization.
Yeah, it's just, and I think it's tough to do an apples to apples evaluation just for exactly what the chief said, right? Walpole has 3 stations and it's still too small. And the reason, frankly, if you remember correctly, some of us toured the Walpole station and spoke to the Walpole fire chief. And he specifically told us that the building was planned to be larger, ended up being smaller, and now they're in the process of building another one. So I think, you always have to look at, do you want to spend the money now or do you want to spend the money later? And I think in all of our experiences, we know that, the old phrase, right, kicking the can down the road actually ends up costing the community more. I think the one thing about Norfolk that may also be different from some of these, maybe except Hyannis, is a lot of communities decide to have more than one station because of call distances and response times. In your community, you can have one station, so it's always on the flip side of operational costs. It's always less money if you can just operate one building as opposed to multiple buildings. So there are some definite benefits to what we're doing in Norfolk in terms of the size of the building, being one building, not having to build a substation or not having to build a second station, gives you all of the parts and pieces that you need to run the department the chief's talking about out of one facility and not have to start operating a second facility.
I think that's a really important point to an average citizen to think about, that there isn't, HVAC in multiple buildings. There isn't maintenance costs and things like that. That would hit home for me as a citizen.
All right, so how do we want to group all this into an answer here? My thought was to lead off saying it's difficult to make an apples-to-apples comparison of fire stations for surrounding towns as each town has unique needs. I mean, do we want to then list, however, here's a list of station square footages. I don't know. What's the best way to answer this?
I think you're right. I think, starting off by making that statement and then, for comparison, here's a few. And then at the end, say, like Hyannis, the decision here is to have one main station that covers the town for response times. So we specifically do not have to operate out of multiple buildings. which are multiple costs to operate and maintain in the future.
And then I think that's a good one, because then you get to see Hyannis has a larger population, they have a larger commercial base, and therefore their station is 13,000 square feet or 10, what is it? Almost
About
10,000, about 10,000 square feet larger. Well, there's why. It's, and even from a demographic standpoint, the operation of the CAPE and the automatic aid and mutual aid that's set up in the way that they are all dispatched and coordinated is, allows and helps facilitate them having one station as well, which that doesn't get included, and that's where the apples to apples is difficult. But that's a good example of where there's a community that's larger and busier, therefore they have a larger facility.
I don't know why this is typing so slow. Does everyone agree with how that's written up, and do we just want to launch into the square footages after that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think you can add in saving on maintenance and operational costs, because the operational budget, is heavily impacted by having multiple facilities. There are also the projects that are recently approved of Bridgewater, and I believe it's Southbridge, that one was 25 million, one's 27 million, and both projects are comparable in size to our project, which is evidence of things we've done to save costs, because we're not necessarily at that cost, and theirs are already bid and about to start, which means they were based off pricing numbers that are previous, almost a year before ours. But yet, I think it's just evidence of how conservative we've been in, our process and what we've done. And another factor to that too, Bridgewater has two facilities, not just one. They're doing a new headquarters building, and it's significant.
So below is a list of surrounding, what are we going to list? The entire department size, or just individual facilities?
I think it's important to list the total square footage of all the facilities, because if you just do a single facility, that doesn't account for the fact that a lot of these towns have multiple facilities. And what we're trying to do is eliminate, or we won't have multiple facilities, and we'll be able to operate and run our entire operation from one location. And what we're trying to capture is how many square feet is needed to run the department or provide service to the town, all in.
Yeah, I'm just wondering if we should focus on towns that are of a similar size to ours.
You could use Rentham as an example. They have two facilities. and their population is about the same as ours.
And could you say something like, X number of square feet over 2 facilities?
Yeah. I mean, you certainly could look at Medfield's facility, you could look at, I know it's a joint facility, but you look at the overall square footage dedicated to fire, it's, the majority of that building is dedicated to the fire department. Yeah, you can even look at a town like Medway, which the population is similar to ours as well. They have 2 facilities. You could look at a town like, let's see, who else? I think Weston has 1 facility. Westford, Massachusetts has 1, no, they have two stations. And I believe those populations are similar, Weston and Westford, if I'm not mistaken.
Westford only has 1 chief.
No,
they had a second, but
they still operate out of it. I visited both when we were preparing for the station.
They did keep it. They kept it open. Okay, because
Yes.
we did the new one, and
Yes.
the new one is the old one.
The new one is gorgeous, and some of the program ideas I got was from the new one. And they have a second station that is out by the Millworks facility.
Oh, that's right. Okay, my bad.
So, Ron, I mean, maybe we're not going to finish this tonight because I feel like maybe you just need to put in some of the square footage, and then we can post this. Because I think, if we can add Rentham, if we can add towns that are similar size, I think it would be helpful.
Yeah, Chief, if you can get us that information. Because I think the examples you're using are better than the ones that we have here. Because, Franklin is a fire station, and if those other towns, Rentham, that you're talking about are strictly fire stations, and, they're similar in demographic in terms of population, and they're also similar, then it's an apples and apples comparison, I guess.
Yeah, I think the Rentham is a public safety building. So, but they have a substation that houses other equipment that they're actually in the process of starting or renovating to man it again.
I mean, even if it's not a surrounding town, Ron, do you have ones that the town is a similar size to ours that you could provide?
The chief just rattled off several that we've been, we're finding it hard to, it's basically I'm doing internet searches, right?
Yeah, okay.
And it's easier if, I think, if the chief knows the other chiefs and has the information readily available.
I essentially did the same thing you did, other than the ones that I've been able to visit. But I look at, just surveys that are done either by DFS or the Norfolk County Chiefs, for example. I can pull the towns that are, 15,000 or less people, which would make them comparable to us, and look at the number of facilities they have and things of that nature.
Okay, so who wants to take the lead on this if I send this out after the meeting? You want me to send it to you, Chief, or Ron, or that you can put your heads together?
We can tag team, and I can definitely come up with a list of departments. I can tell you, I've asked a few chiefs, they don't know the square footage of their facility. Usually it's, the first thing I hear is we don't have enough this or that. They don't know the exact square footage, but they know, all right, I'm lacking storage space, or I need X, Y, and Z, or I'm having to house this thing over there, or that, they're...
I mean, are we approaching this the wrong way? Do we is there some other way to answer this question? I mean, I think the square footage is good.
I think the one way to answer this question too is to, people are going to see or know what's comparable, but another way to answer the question is like, through the process or through the design process, we arrived at this number with a lot of space being engineered out of the structure, and a lot of spaces being made multifaceted or multifunctional.
Yeah, I think some of that gets covered in other questions, Chief.
Yeah.
So, okay. So I'll send these to you guys, and if you can put your heads together and come up with, Ron, if are you talking to us, Ron?
Think that to me it's saying something, right? It's like, we know the town wants to build the smallest station possible. We get it. Everybody wants to build the smallest thing possible, and everybody wants to spend the least amount of money. We've never had a project that said, build us whatever you think should be built, and we'll spend whatever we want to spend, whatever it costs. The big question is, what does that mean, the smallest building possible? Because if we build it smaller, knowing that we're going to have to add on to it in 10 or 15 years, what have we done, right? And it's frankly no different than what Norfolk is standing with today, which is a fire station that has the fire accommodations outside in a trailer. It's like, 15 or 20 years from now, if we build something smaller, do people want to see the apparatus being parked outside during, the winter? Do people want to see, additions going on to the building? So that's, this comparison to other towns, I think, is twofold. What do they actually have? And the multiple facilities is a big piece of that, right? And then why do they have multiple facilities? Because they find out that one's too small. And that's the case with Walpole.
Yes, Walpole originally, with the new building, was trying to consolidate the operation into one building, and within 3 months or so, or 6 months or so, they had to renovate and reopen a facility that they had closed.
Okay. I don't want to beat this one any further. So, Ron and Chief, can I send it to you guys when we're done here to maybe put some square footages in?
Yep.
Okay. Why are we planning to build a new building instead of renovating what we have? So, Ron, I think you wanted to add some code references in here?
Yeah, and we can do that. So, same thing. If you send this off, I'm going to fill in those code references that we sent after we sent this back out. And it can be much briefer, more bulleted. Aaron was right when he said these things read better sometimes when it's just bulleted facts. I think Matt's question of, it's easy for us to put in an answer like this, category 4, but, even his recollection as to why we were doing the category 4 was not, not the reason. He was recalling correctly that we certainly had that discussion about an emergency operations system needing to be category 4. We just don't have an emergency operations system in this building. It's the MEC, which is where the police station is. So, I don't know if the police station's actual category 4. I can tell you it does not comply with the new code of the 140 mile an hour wind. But so even the police station, it's a good thing you built it, because if you hadn't, you would have had to do more things to comply with the updated codes. So
I think they're putting in the reference to the code was really in response to what Matt said about why is this have to be a Cat 4, because it's simple. We can just pull that out of the code and
right.
and put it in there. And if he thinks that's germane to this question, then let's take his input. And I mean, it's very, very easy to pull that reference.
Yep. No, I think it is good. Okay. What has changed since 2016 that requires increasing the size of the existing fire station?
Right, and that's
I think
just
it's-
something else that I can do more of a bulleted answer.
Yeah, I think if you could, Ron.
Yep.
I know you went over a lot of that earlier tonight.
Yep.
Just go back and watch the video.
I've got it in writing.
Let's see, why is the cost per square foot higher than previously defined in 2016 and 2019? I think I clicked too many times. Sorry, everybody. I don't know why this is going so slow. I mean, I thought this response was good. This increases the result of construction. I mean, there are market spikes where materials and systems will rise and fall, however the total cost per square foot rises annually. Do you think we need the part about the pandemic-related cost escalation? Or can we simplify this?
Well, I think the years between is a decent, it's 3 to 5% a year
Yeah.
is escalation in and of itself. And then I think the other thing to make sure is accurate, as Matt pointed out, is, site permitting, there's no cost to that because it's the town permitting the town, so the town.
Yeah, but that's not exactly true. So
Okay.
so the site construction costs, I mean, our site construction costs are over $2 million.
Yeah, the permitting piece, though, is what I'm specific.
The permitting piece is the engineers, who have to put together the permitting with the Department of Environmental Protection, with the Health Department.
Okay.
The fees that are associated with that going through town. I think the comment of, the town was going to do the site permitting on their own.
I think that was because there's usually a permit fee for doing a project that the town is, that someone coming to the town to do a project has to pay the town. I think that was what he was getting at. So I think
this project is paying the town.
Yeah, the beta costs we're paying. That's the peer review cost for the planning board.
Right.
So that impacts our budget, as really does the escalation / inflation, however you want to call it, for the pandemic costs. I mean, I know everybody knows it, but I think we should, maybe not as long as it's written in there, but I think you need to put something in there because the escalation percentage went up than it would normally.
Makes sense.
And I think what Matt was pointing out was just the differences, right? I was pointing out what was not in there. So, for instance, the town was going to self-perform the owner's project management role. Okay, but you were going to self-perform that on the other project. You're not self-performing it here. It doesn't mean it's free, you know?
Right.
On this
It's
project.
still a cost, even if you're self-performing. You're not doing something else if you're OPMing it in-house, which you can do. You can do that for MGL, but there is a cost.
And then commissioning, there wasn't commissioning on the last project, and there is here. So, again, I think, Aaron and Steve, myself, we were basically saying, like, what are the differences, right? In other words, why is the cost higher? This is why the cost is higher. We weren't critiquing the decisions that were made on the last project to either somehow self-perform the permitting or somehow not do commissioning or self-perform the OPM work. The hazmat surveys and abatement, I think he read that as like a hazmat survey. Yes, they did hazmat surveys before, but when we did our survey, we found a lot different stuff. And the surveys and abatement costs that we're talking about, which is $260,000 in the budget right now, that's also the after the fact surveys, right? Because when the abatement's done, the hygienist has to go in there and survey the area and say it's all clean air, you can go ahead and demo it. So the number of 260 is simply the work to be done in the future. The numbers to perform the assessments, if you will, the survey assessments as to what's actually in the building, that's not included in the $260,000. That was already paid for in another line item in the budget. So, it is apples to apples, but just like we said at the beginning of the project, we couldn't rely on those older surveys.
And do you think you should take the all those costs per square foot for those other stations, should those also reflect what it would be in cost today? Do you think that's something that would be helpful?
I thought this was in response to the cost per square foot that was listed in 2016.
Right. So in 2016, the combined station was budgeted at $400 a square foot.
Which, based off of other projects, was significantly underestimated, almost by $100.
I'm saying take it to the next step where you say, okay, a Hyannis Fire Station was bid in 2017 at $570 a square foot. If it was bid today, it would be X.
I don't know that we need to get to that level of detail. I mean, we tell them that the costs increase. Yeah. Unless other people think it's important, I think let's try and keep it relatively simple.
One thing I think could help, Chief, at the beginning of this meeting, didn't you mention that a couple other stations were just bid that were similar in size but more expensive?
Yeah.
Could we put something like that in here for those, but say not yet constructed, just to show that our estimates are under what is currently being bid? Or is that a bad idea to say that?
I don't know if I can get it. I just, only reason I got the information from Bridgewater is because we have a call firefighter that's on that department and obviously has been tuned to some parts of the project.
And I will say, when I watched the video from the December town meeting last night, they actually did mention that typical construction costs for these types of facilities are $500 to $600 a square foot, but they're going to be able to do it for $350 because they purchased the building and the building's already there and they're just renovating it. So there was some acknowledgement that typically the numbers are higher.
And then they peeled back the layers and it exploded.
I think it turned into more than they thought.
Yeah.
That's a really good point, Kevin. Maybe you start this entire answer off with this. That when the police station was built in 2013 or whatever year, when the police station was built at town meeting, the town was advised that stations like this are $500 to $600 a square foot way back then. But that the cost savings was going to be because of, they purchased a building. Just exactly what you said. I think that allows folks to understand that, and actually, I think this goes hand in hand with the whole question of why aren't we renovating, right? Because if people heard that back in 2016, that, typically, yeah, it's $500 to $600 a square foot in 2016. But we're going to do it for $350 or $400 because we're renovating an existing building. That didn't end up being the case, right? So I think that makes the sort of explanation, if you want to call it an explanation, or the rationale as to why we're not renovating a building, because we know we're going to have to bring that up to category 4, and we're going to have to bring it all up to current code, and it's going to be more expensive.
Yeah, I think what we have typed answers the question well. I think if it comes up as a question at town meeting or at a community event, that's when we can bring that up possibly.
Okay.
What does everybody else think?
That makes sense.
Okay. What would it mean if we reduce the size from 26,325 to 16,000 square feet? Is 26,325 our current square footage? What is the exact number?
Let me check. It's not. It's not
25,694 or something like that.
Yeah, it's 25,570 or something. Let me check it out here.
I'm just thinking, why don't we put that number in instead?
Yeah, I'm going to give you the number from the estimate. $26,694.
Okay.
Okay. I think otherwise this response is good.
Oh, can you fix that? You got both numbers jumbled together on the size part.
It's crossed out.
Oh,
I just
okay.
can't see the
I can't
cross
see
out.
the cross. Okay.
It's 26 million square feet.
I was like,
How does the current estimated cost compare to costs in 2016? The cost presented in 2016 did not include 25% of the area required by the 2015 need study. I mean, is this repetitive
Yeah, to the square footage cost, kind of.
to the square footage cost one?
A little bit.
It is. It is. I almost said see above, but I just copied it down.
I think if we're going to leave it in there, it should be moved adjacent to the other one, though.
Well, that's what Matt said, see above.
Yeah.
In his comments. Maybe-
Yeah, I think he
maybe
was referring
delete
more to
it.
his comments above, not necessarily for us to add that, but.
No, I think his comments, though, bring up a good point where, we're saying that it didn't include 25% of the area we required. I think this is a good place to put the differences in what designing an efficient building means as opposed to designing a building smaller than what you need. Because, his calculations are correct. We took, over 4,000 square feet out of our building. But in effect, we removed one room, which was the washroom, because the mech is doing it. So that's kind of a multi-purpose. And the lobby now, because the mech is watching it, operates as our washroom, right? So we didn't take out any needed program. We took out net to gross. And I think that's something that maybe one or two sentences can just simply explain. Or, like you said, Kevin, maybe that's an answer that we give when somebody asks the question at town meeting.
Yeah, I wonder if maybe, now I'm rethinking this, maybe we should just say This has been answered in a previous question, see above.
Or just put both questions together. Like, just have both questions
Yeah,
listed.
that's a good
in one
idea.
answer,
That's a good idea.
because it's kind of the same question.
So take this out. And put it with this one, right? Where's the cost? What is the current estimated cost compared? Why is the cost per square previously defined in 2016 and 2019? How does the current cost compare? Yeah, I think that's good. And then we can just get rid of this one. Okay. Does the proposed project include all costs that will be required to complete the project? I think we reduced this one pretty well before. Project includes updated code, master. Do you need to leave? Do you need to leave?
No.
Oh. In addition, probably. I think this one looks good if everybody else agrees.
Yeah,
Good?
agreed. Yep.
Okay. Would it be less expensive to relocate the station during construction? This idea was proposed around 2016. I think that's good.
The only thing I have to say about that is it might be helpful to just right up front, like we did on the other one, say no. You know, and then go on to explain it. That way someone doesn't have to dig through the whole thing to find what the answer is.
Or I'll say in the committee's opinion, no.
Yeah, that's fine.
I don't know.
Yeah, 'cause I know on the previous one, it just said yes.
That's not an,
What's that?
I don't think that's an opinion. That's a absolute. It's not an opinion. I mean, I talked to Walpole and Needham about, they spent millions
On that canopy garage.
on the temporary solutions that they had to put in place.
Is everybody good with
And
me
didn't-
just saying no?
Wasn't an estimate done early on in this process?
So I got an estimate for a temporary, structure for a station, and it was, probably, no, it would have been over $500,000 all in. It was just the structure itself was going to be over 400, and that didn't include site work or anything or any utility, nothing. That just included putting a building in place.
How is the project controlling costs? Project is needs-based. All staff members and the building committee are focused on the most compact station and the need-only program. The need-only program will allow. Our mission is to ensure the size of the building is only what we need to be safe and code compliant with space for future growth, with no need to expand in 20 or 30 years.
Kevin, Matt brought up a point that we should maybe consider is deleting the all staff members, because it's really the committee
Yep,
that goes
that
through
has
it
the
that
final
way.
say.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was thinking, do we say the building committee weighing input from all staff members?
We've made changes to this building based on comments that Matt has made. We've made changes to this based on the planning board, everybody involved, the zoning board, Bob, Dave, everybody.
The previous town administrator.
Todd. Todd, right? And it's been for the good, right? So we can certainly say the building committee,
In conjunction with?
yeah, with input from everybody in town. I mean, from everybody in the, the town departments. We've had all department meetings. The DPW has chimed in.
I think he's thinking it sounds more like it's the firefighters, they being the staff. I think other departments, that's probably a good point to really show that we had to go through all those, whether they were boards or committees.
But all my staff members have literally had the opportunity to chime in or provide their consideration, and there have been times where those considerations have been accepted and we implemented them into the building, and then there are others where I had to go back and tell them, listen, that won't work because it adds this amount of whatever to the building and is too costly, and they were like, nope, we understand, we'd rather keep the cost down. So it is, I don't know.
So what about this? I changed it to basically say the building committee, utilizing information gathered from town departments and boards, have focused on the most compact station the need-only program will allow. The committee's mission is to ensure the size of the building is only what we need to be safe and code compliant, with space for future growth with no need to expand in 20 to 30 years.
Yeah.
So it's saying we made the decisions, but we obviously used input from other people. I mean, I think you have to do that.
After the town departments and boards should be has instead of have. Just the way it got changed.
Just focused on the most competitive. That the need-only program will allow. Everyone agree with those modifications?
Yep.
Okay. How will the project control costs during construction? The design team will remain nimble to make sure anything that arises will be assessed and addressed in a cost-effective manner during the process if we see spikes. Steve, I think you had mentioned you had something you wanted to add to this, right?
Yeah, again, I was responding back to some of the comments Matt had said, and I think, don't forget, we put these FAQs out when we were doing design, and I think some of these are, some of our responses are more, during that design period. Now we're basically at the, we're at the bidding period. We have, the documents are basically done. So I think when we say that, during the process, if we see prices spike for one material, we can identify other options and satisfy the project requirements. Once we get a low bidder who has a contract based on our specs and our drawings, they basically own everything that's in there. So we wouldn't necessarily be, if he come up to us and say, hey, lumber just went up, or they use something else. This sink just went up, and it's $4,000 more than it was before. We're going to say, okay, well, we're not giving you another $4,000. It's part of your contract.
It's in your bid, right?
But I see it the other way too, right? So I see it the other way where, and using that's a perfect example, Steve. Somebody comes to the meeting and says, hey, these sinks have gone up $400. And we say exactly what you said. Well, can I use this sink instead? It's $250. And, we had originally bid $300. So we'll give you a $50 credit and use this sink. This sink's just as good as that sink. Is that something? Many projects would say, no, just put in what we told you to.
We can entertain anything.
Exactly. Yeah. So that's why I kind of explained to Matt that change orders are not always an added cost. Sometimes they're a deduct cost. And, remaining nimble, we're going to have our geotech engineer on site, right? If the contractor comes back and says, can I use this material on site as common fill? and the geotech says, yeah, you can do that, and they give us a credit for not importing the fill, then that's a credit towards the project, right? So, I just think that the idea, I think the philosophy that many people have is that the owner is always in charge of this project. You're paying everybody. So, just because a contractor says, I'm going to do something or I'm not going to do something, it doesn't mean that the owner's side of the table is at the will of the contractor, right? We work together as a team, and, they're going to need us, we're going to need them. And throughout this process, if they're able to come back and say, these things are spiking, it's creating a problem for me, and we help them solve their problem, and it ends up being a credit, and we get just as good of a building in the process, then it's a win-win for everybody. And I think that's what it means by, we're nimble, we have an open mind, and we're not just, okay, we bid this thing, the contractor's going to build it, we have no control.
I wonder if we could just delete the second sentence.
Well, I'm thinking maybe at the end of the sentence, the second sentence, we say, provided it's to the benefit of the town. Can identify other options to satisfy the project requirements, provided it's to the benefit of the project and the town.
Provided
or financial benefit, something like that.
Is a financial and project benefit.
Because you're right. I mean, we may do value engineering credits during the project if there's something that we may not need to offset something else.
Yeah. So during the process, if we see prices spike for one material or system, we can identify other options to satisfy the project requirements, provided that there's a financial and project benefit to the town.
Right.
I think that sounds good.
Yeah.
Yep.
Agree?
Better.
Yep. Okay. Someone stop me if they don't agree, but otherwise we're going to keep going. How does the town propose to pay for this project in light of needing to expand the Freeman? I think we should just clarify. The town's debt load will be at this.
Are we able to give them any kind of information on what it's going to cost the taxpayer, even if it's a range?
Yeah, we've talked about that. I mean, we presented it at one of our committee meetings. I think we were all of the agreement that at this point,
I don't think it's responsible to do that.
let's get the construction cost, because we don't know if the construction cost estimate's going to come in high, low on the number.
Well,
There are also things that are coming offline or whatever else, and Todd is a financial whiz. He may have ways of navigating this with the financing and when bills hit or whatever that allow it to not have as significant of an impact or whatever. There's a lot of moving pieces, I think, that would have to be in play before we publicize something like that responsibly.
Well, then we're not, the only opportunity we're going to have to let them know is at the special town meeting, right?
Yeah, and I think that's.
We'll have bids in hand, and some of this will be rolling, right? And if I'm not mistaken, I know Todd's approach is very conservative, so whatever we have that we can present at that point in time, chances are the number is going to be lower because that's just the way, that's the way Todd operates. That's the way the town operates from a financial perspective is, we're going to be conservative. We're going to let you know, but, or let that'll be a work in process. And there'll be something that we'll be able to probably put on the table that is more accurate or closer than just us guessing right now or pulling a number out, or assuming something that isn't that accurate.
But just the number one question that residents are going to have. That's all I'm trying to point out.
Oh, I agree. I just think we we need to have a close to firm answer, though, because if that number changes or fluctuates too much, especially in the wrong direction, that it will cripple this, and it'll halt immediately. It will be.
I hear what you're saying. I'm just.
I mean, we could, if we get bids, Todd, on December 22nd, I mean, how long would it take to put together something that says, based on this submitted construction cost, it's estimate, and these other factors, it's estimated to be this, and then that's X, and then Y is coming off the books over this period of time? Is that something that is relatively quick to put together, or does? Okay. I mean, so why don't we put in here, I mean, I think we talked about this the last meeting, we can reword this, or we can put in here that the committee is working and to bid the project, and we'll prepare an estimate in time for the special town meeting. That way, people know if they'll get the number at special town meeting.
And you could even put in there, we feel like as a committee, it's irresponsible to put a number out there
until a construction bid is in hand.
Concrete, that, to me, that's the responsible thing to do. I think that's what got the previous, project in trouble, is that there were these numbers thrown out there, but there were numbers that were thrown out there with some unknowns, and a lot of unknowns. We're going to be trying to give a number with all the bases covered, with contingencies built in.
Something like that.
Yep. And I'll have to double check, because I think the KP, there's two components. There's the high school and the middle school, and I think it's 2026. I'll double check that.
Okay.
It's not 2025, but I'll double check.
Okay.
And then, obviously, we have special town meeting next week. The week following, we have the tax hearing for the tax rates that'll be set for following year, or this year currently. That information, so then all that changes, whatever calculation I would have to do anyways, to come up to the number. So, and then, based on the number that we actually have as a definitive number, I can then just factor that in and say, okay, it's going to be X dollars based on the average household of X, Y, and Z, because I'll have all that new information.
Okay. Does everyone agree with how I put that in there then? Committee is working and bidding the project and plans to prepare an estimate approximately the cost per household for the January 11th special town meeting. The committee feels the best approach is to have this cost once a construction bid is in hand. All right.
Maybe instead of saying have this cost, to present this cost once a bid is in hand.
Feels the best approach is to present this cost.
Yep.
Okay. Town has other projects that need to be completed, such as the school expansion. How can we afford to pay for both? I think that answer's fine. Otherwise, I would say almost get rid of this and do the same thing where we put both questions here. But I think we leave it, unless someone feels otherwise. Why is the design all electric? So, Ron, I think we had anticipated you might put something in here.
Yeah, I did.
Okay.
So the benefit of an all-electric, right, so you can erase that. Well, actually, I think Aaron wants to say Norfolk is a green community, and as such, the benefit of an all-electric design is future-ready and everything else we wrote in.
Yep, okay. Oh, shoot. What did I do? as such. The benefit. Okay. Does the team see anything or expect anything that could derail the project? I don't think we had any changes to that one. How will the project impact traffic? The new station will remain on the existing fire station site. I think we were good with that one. Why do we need 9 bunk rooms if we only have 4 staff on a shift today? Department expects a 5th member in 2023, 2024 before the station is completed. During storm events and all call events, there are currently 8 to 12 staff members who stay overnight. These events happen at least 50% of the year. Currently, these staff members and/or neighboring town firefighters for station coverage sleep on the floor of the station trailer and chairs. This condition is not conducive to a healthy.
So I think the wording of that is, it alludes that, half the year there's 12 people sleeping over in the station. That's not accurate. We do have several full recalls a month, and we do have several recalls. We have tons of recalls every week. So a good example is just this past week, I had 2 people kind of fall asleep in the station, but they, there's no space for them to go when the on-duty staff has their room set up. It is not in good taste to go at 2:30 in the morning and disrupt their space. There's no additional space or space for someone to come in to fill a recall that allows them to rest or be in position to sleep or answer the next call without it being in a recliner or on the floor or something else. So that is the use of the immediate use of those additional rooms will be taken up by that, as well as when we do have storm coverage and those events that are overnight events. Yes, there will be people sleeping in those rooms, but that won't be half of the nights of the year. That'll be several, but the immediate use of those additional rooms will be my on-call people that like to ride along and answer calls, which they currently don't have a place to stay or extra room or space to use, and then the recalls for ambulance recalls, company recalls, any other recalls, station coverage recalls, any of those types of recalls where the on-duty staff has their bunk room set up or their space set up for the shift. There is no overflow space. That space will be used as overflow space right now. And that is the one area where I know from a firefighting, fire service perspective, we're not going to gain or need extra apparatus. We're not going to need, necessarily an extra workstation here or there, but if we do, there's ways to put that into what is currently there. This is the major area of where the department can grow and probably will grow as the population of the town grows. So it is more cost effective, and this was something to discuss.
And I don't know if I'm reading too much into this, but when people think, we have an emergency event or a recall and somebody needs to come stay, or a storm event, they get the feeling that that's like a once a winter, twice a winter, 3 times a year. And when it's an emergency, you make do with what you got, right?
Right.
But it's really not the case when that's your everyday job. Like, for instance, if I went to work every day, or if I went to work and there was an emergency situation and, Don told me I had to sit on the floor and work for a day, I'd say, okay, I understand there's shit going on, right? But if I came in 3 times a week and had to do that, it'd get old, right?
Right.
And that's why, maybe I'm reading into it too much, I don't know, but, you know, I kind of see the storm event and I kind of see this, and I completely understand what you're saying, which is why it's hard for me to see some comments that say, we want to see the data. In other words, prove it to us. And I think the aspect of prove it to us is something exactly what you just said. You know, if there's a bunk over there and I need to take a nap or, you know, get some shut eye here because I'm returning from a call, and that's somebody else's bed, I'm not going to go lay down in somebody else's bed because they're coming in 4 hours and they're going to need their bed. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, it just doesn't happen. And I think that that's something that you may want to somehow explain, because I suspect this question is going to come up, you know, on the floor of the town meeting.
Yeah, and I think that piece that I just, you know, talked about, you know, in the annual report every year, we put up the number of, you know, simultaneous calls or you know, that kind of thing, where we would have, you know, for every single EMS transport we have, there is a recall of at least 2 people. So anytime that happens, you could be in the need of overflow space. Like if the person answering or taking a recall worked the 24-hour shift before and was busy all night, you know, right now they're not coming back to take the recall, but if they knew they had a space they could go lay down in anticipation for the next call, they'd probably come back. But right now they don't have that. So, and then the other piece is, again, that's really the majority of the growth that's built into the building is built into that area. That's the area where we can grow, is with the on-duty staff. Other than that, the building doesn't have any other place for us to grow. So when you talk about a small 5% growth factor and trying to build something responsible for what the department is going to need, that's where that comes from. And the justification for the now is we have events now where this will get used. We have events now regularly, not, you know, once or twice a year, but regularly. That
just delete that sentence. That's all.
That's what I'm thinking, and then we can say something that, and, you know, if someone wants to know how often it is, then when they ask the question at town meeting, you can answer it.
You can explain it then, right?
I think maybe we just say currently these, additionally.
The other thing that we wrote in here is that we could easily have made 4 double bunk rooms, right?
Right. That was the original plan, was to do 4 or 5 doubles, and then during feasibility, one of the engineers said, actually, it's going to be cheaper to do it this way on the front end because you have to account for infrastructure, air circulation, all these other factors that, you know, I'm not an engineer or an architect, so I don't know that. I'm just assuming, okay, this is a cheap way to do it, but still have the space available to us for the future. Well, it's actually not true that that's the way it is. So this is how we arrived at 9.
Mm-hmm. So, and I think that that's another just important piece to this, is that, you know, by not doing multiple people in the same room, it's healthier, number one. Number 2, it's gender neutral. So now you don't get into a situation where in the future, if you have, you know, mixed company, for instance, and it's less money because of, you know, clearances and accommodations and things like that. So, you know, that's the exercise we went through. Otherwise, we'd have 4 rooms and maybe people wouldn't question it, you know?
Yeah. What about adding this additional sentence that I put in here that says, additionally, this space allows for future growth of the department, which is a goal of this project?
Yeah, it's 100%.
And then finally, current codes and regulations require separate male and female quarters in response to the design utilizes a gender-neutral approach to comply with these codes. This approach also requires less area reflected in the compact design. Everyone good with that?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yep.
Why are we planning for 12 office workstations if we currently have 4 staff members on duty? I think we were all pretty good with this one.
Yeah.
Which was determined. We needed. Do we need all the planned apparatus bays? Can the number be reduced? I think we were good with that one. We added the statement that all the apparatus is on site. We're almost there. Why is the kitchen and living space so large? The current station does not have any real kitchen aside from the temporary 20-year-old trailer behind the station, which is undersized for the current 4 staff members. Adding a 5th member and finding space for the all-call 8 to 12 staff members during storm events is currently non-existent. Proposed spaces are sized to accommodate the need to gather for breakfast, lunch, or dinner. Depending on the time of the call, the size of this space is comparable to other stations in neighboring communities. I think
There was,
The issue that came up on this, or go ahead, Ron.
Oh, no, I'm sorry.
It was just, again, it was a response to Matt's comments about the actual age of the trailer, which he's saying is 13 years old. But isn't this trailer number 2?
yes, this is
So
a
there was
second
one
rendition
before
of the
that.
trailer.
So if we say trailer number 1 at 20 years and trailer number 2, which is now 13 years old, it's just, I guess it's sort of the nitpicking of the facts, but if that's the information, then fine, we can use that.
what if we said something like this?
Why does it matter how?
And it's a
just gonna
space
say
question,
that.
not really an
For that
appliance
question.
question. I think he misinterpreted that, but
Aside from the temporary trailer behind the station was
Yeah, how old it is, doesn't matter, it's
also.
a trailer.
It's got nothing to do with the question.
Second trailer,
it's a space thing. That's what it is.
Right.
the department has been operating out of.
Yeah, it's a good idea. Take the numbers out.
Yep. Okay.
You know, and I didn't know if it made sense because the other question was, you know, or the comment had to do with appliances, and you know, we are also looking at the size of the space, right? That's the question is why is the living space in the kitchen so large? And I think during our working group discussions, we've had the discussion about these are not 8 people who are here on a daily basis, these 8 to 12 members. They're not family members. You know, it's not as if you're in the kitchen with your family. You're in the kitchen with work colleagues. So you just need more space not to be sitting on top of one another, you know? It's just kind of like what the chief said. You know, you don't just jump on someone else's bed. You don't just sit, you know, or get in somebody else's space while they're doing something, you know? So is it bigger than what you have in the trailer? Of course, because the trailer doesn't allow for anything. Is it oversized for the number of people? Absolutely not. I mean, if you have 12 people in there at lunch, chief, you know, you need space for 12 people.
Or like the response we had this morning, there was 10 or 12 people, you know, in and out of between the trailer and the building, you know, discussing a complex call we had and restocking and redoing, you know, there you are. Like that's a case in point, a great example.
I think we talked about adding that sentence too.
Yes.
Okay.
Because it's not just,
Just as a note, I really don't care about wordsmithing these too much, and you know, I spoke at the last our last meeting. You know, I think commercial grade quality is just better language. I'm not. It's not that big of a deal to me. But when I hear high quality residential quality, and I understand why, I just think as a taxpayer, a resident, I don't know if I want that language. I think commercial makes sense.
Yeah.
commercial, yeah, I thought we were agreed that commercial was what it was supposed to be. Commercial grade quality, like,
I think you're right. Okay. Why is there an Ansel system and exhaust hood in the kitchen?
the code requires it.
Ron, I think you had something you wanted to change on this?
I didn't have anything to change. It's simply a code requirement, period.
Yeah.
I had a comment, again, based on what Matt said, was in the multiple unrelated colleagues. And then he brought up the fact that it sounds like that it's being opened up to the public, which it's not, or outside groups. So if that's a confusing phrase, I thought multiple fire shifts 24/7, as well as mutual aid firefighters from neighboring towns, in place of multiple unrelated colleagues.
You want to rattle
Does that make sense, Chief?
Yeah, that makes a lot more sense.
Rattle that off again and then we can read it.
Yeah, multiple fire shifts.
Yep.
24/7.
Oops. Shit.
Make it even easier. You just say multiple fire personnel.
As well as mutual aid firefighters from neighboring towns.
But the reality is that doesn't.
It doesn't matter. It's a code requirement.
The code requires if you have a cooktop, you are going to have an Ansel system.
And that's actually, I think that's the easiest way to answer it. It doesn't matter who's cooking on it. It doesn't matter if it's one person or nobody cooks on it. If it's there, it's got to have the Ansel system because that's what the code says.
Right.
So
Then we should get rid of the
get rid of all of that. Yeah.
Entirely.
Get rid of, because it doesn't matter. It's because the code requires it in this building.
So just,
Right.
code requires a commercial exhaust and fire over any cooktop in a non-residential building.
Correct.
Could we just say?
That's even simpler.
The fire station is not considered a residential building?
Right.
Okay.
Done.
Done. All right. So, well, we're not there yet. So,
Okay.
so I'll send this to the chief and Ron, I guess, so you can add some of the square footage. And delete that thread. And Ron, you can update the code changes and the category 4 references. I guess, do we want to make a motion that pending those updates, allow me to take one last look at it and then send it to Amanda to post, or do people want to go through this again?
No, I think what we did covers it. We just need to get those,
Get it updated.
Okay.
I think everything can be updated except for the
I
square
don't want to wait
footages.
for the next meeting to get this stuff.
No, I don't either. So I'll ask for a motion that pending the update, the discussed updates to be made by Doran Whittier and Chief Kinney, these frequently asked question edits will be accepted and posted to the town website.
Second.
Second. All right, we'll take a roll call vote. Justin Yanosik?
I know, but you need more time?
See, sounds like you might be talking to somebody.
All right, who made the mo,
Oh. Chris Baker made the motion. Chief Kinney seconded it.
thank you.
All right, we'll come to Justin. Justin Casanova Davis,
Aye.
Todd Lindmark,
Yes.
Chris Baker,
Aye.
Kevin Champagne, aye. Chief Kinney,
Aye.
Justin Yanosik. Well, even if he says nay, he's outvoted. So I think he might have gotten pulled away. Okay. Next is, please consider approval of the meeting minutes.
Right, these minutes are from the select board meeting on the 25th.
Sorry, Amanda's, oh, he is still there, okay. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, these minutes are from the select board meeting on October 25th for the discussion of the fire station project. I reviewed the minutes, had no edits, so I'd like to ask for a motion to approve said minutes.
So moved?
Second.
Okay. You have to take a roll call vote.
All right, Todd Lindmark?
Yes.
Chris Baker? Aye.
Kevin Champagne, aye.
Chief Kenny?
Aye.
Justin Casanova Davis?
Aye.
And Justin Yanosik?
I think Justin might have had to step away.
Abstain.
So we'll skip him. Okay. Any other action items that anybody wants to discuss? Otherwise, we can adjourn. All right, I'll ask for a motion to adjourn the meeting.
So moved.
Second.
All right, Todd Lindmark,
Aye.
Chris Baker,
Aye.
Kevin Champagne, aye. Chief Kinney, Justin Casanova Davis.
Aye.
All right, the meeting's adjourned. Thank you, everyone. So I'll
Thanks, sir. Thanks.
probably do a right.